Over the last 20 years or more, I'm pretty sure I've spent more time working on my productivity system than actually getting the things that are in it done. If you're constantly tweaking your system or worse, rebuilding it from the ground up every time you find a new method, you probably know how I felt. Building a new folder structure for your notes or restructuring and retagging all your tasks feels like you're really accomplishing something. And honestly, it can be a little bit fun too, to start all over with things. But it's not productive. In this video, I'm going to share how I took the best of a whole bunch of different systems that I've used over the years and made the perfect hybrid for me. And more importantly, how I went from working on my system to working on the things that are in my system. I've used some sort of system to track my time and to-do lists as far back as I can remember. I'm pretty sure I started with a system called Daytimer when I was working my first real job after high school. Funny enough, it looks like the layout hasn't really changed in the almost 40 years since then. And man, that screenshot that I've got up here really brings back some memories. I read Getting Things Done sometime probably around 2003, and I proceeded to set up a whole folder system for tracking everything in my life. And I mean physical file folders in a big, tall, metal 4-drawer filing cabinet that just weighed a ton. But it wasn't long before everything went digital, really, so I went down a whole bunch of new rabbit holes there. I've used OmniFocus, Things, Todoist, Reminders, and various other apps over the years. And I've tried every folder layout system you can imagine. Para, PPV, Johnny Decimal, and probably a bunch of others that I don't even remember at this point. Whenever I read about a new setup or watched a YouTube video talking about this great new system, I would spend hours restructuring everything. I was always convinced that this new system was the one that was finally going to help me get everything done, but none ever did. I would knock things off my list, but usually it was because I realized as I was moving from one system to another, I was probably never going to do it. I never really actually got a lot done. I spent a lot of time feeling like I was the problem. The systems work for all these other people, so clearly I must be doing something wrong. But a couple of years ago, I realized the problem isn't me. It's that I was trying to work with systems that were designed by other people for their needs. And some of the things about them just don't click for me. My light bulb moment was probably when I was using the Para system to organize my notes and various other files. It was super close to the ideal system for me, but there was just a couple of things about it that I couldn't make work. This time, instead of trying some other new system, I started making small changes to the Para folder structure to suit the way my brain works. Whenever I felt a little bit of friction about where I should save a note, or I had to stop and think, where did I save that file that I worked on the other day? I thought about where I expected it should fit. And then I moved it, or I created a folder to put it in inside my system. Gradually, everything ended up in the first place that I thought of when I was working on something. It took me a few months, honestly, to get everything sorted up into a system that felt like it worked for me, but I gradually started getting more work done because I wasn't constantly having to think about where to save this or where do I find that file. If you're in the same boat I was, constantly trying new systems, switching apps, and looking for the perfect setup, you probably already know that's not working for you. Instead of trying to fit your thinking into someone else's design, the solution is to create your own. A system that's set up to work the way you think. There are two ways that you can do this. Number one is just start from scratch. Make folders that make sense to you whenever you're creating a new note or new file that doesn't fit into a folder you've already got. Or the same for project groups and tags that make sense when you're adding something to your task manager. As you add more things to your system, you can refine how those folders are laid out. Figure out how different folders are related, and they can go inside of a parent folder that all fits in a wider scope. Same thing for projects in your task manager. It will take time, but gradually you'll end up with a setup that's designed specifically for you. And that makes a lot more sense when you're working on something and need to find a file or need to figure out where to save it. The second option is to start with someone else's system and gradually adjust things to make it your own. Whenever you find a friction point, figure out why that is and what feels more in sync for you. Here's what I mean. This diagram shows the basic layout for the Para system. I'll leave a link to another video that explains this in a lot more detail down below if you're not already familiar with it. But the basic idea behind Para, P-A-R-A, is you've got 4 top-level folders: projects, areas, resources, and archives. The two that I had real trouble with was projects and areas. The idea behind this in the Para system is the projects folder holds anything that you're actively working on. So this could be a mix of personal and business or any other part of your life, all mixed together in the projects folder if they're active. And then areas is bigger picture stuff like personal, business, family, whatever silos that you've got your life split into there. And these are the two areas that just didn't make sense for me. I couldn't get my head around keeping all these things mixed together in the projects folder more than anything. I tend to think in terms of the part of my life that things relate to and then silo things that way. So what I did to change this for myself ultimately is I took these areas and moved them into the top level. So they became the primary folders. And then the projects, personal projects go into the personal folder, business goes into the business folder, and so on. So to me, it just makes more sense when I'm working on something, say for the house that I want to go and find records or receipts or manuals or whatever it might be. To me, it makes more sense that that's in the personal folder than having to think about, well, is that a current project? Is it in the projects folder? Is it an area? Those are the things that just added friction for me. Every time I had to go looking for something or was going to save something new, I had to stop and really think about that. So having them in these silos just works better for me. It's not to say the system isn't great the way it works out of the box. Lots of people use it. Lots of people swear by it. So that's great. But it's just, for me, this made more sense. But I started with the Para structure and then worked my way backwards to figure out what is it exactly that's making me stop and have to think about this every time. And that's how I ended up landing on a system that works so much better for me. And I save a lot of time just because I don't have to stop and think about things the same way. It's just natural for me to go to the right folder and I know where things are going to be. And something I would suggest is whether you do it I'm using MindNode, the mind mapping application for this diagram, but whether you use something like that or you just use an outliner or plain text outlines, whatever it might be, it doesn't really matter. But I suggest creating something like this that's kind of your working model for your folder structure, for your tags and groups, for task managers, whatever it might be. And keep this up to date so that you can always go back to it and refer. And if you need to think about a better way to do it, at least for me, it's a lot easier when I'm working with something visual like this and I can just drag stuff around and put it wherever I want to put and see if it makes sense to me overall. So I have one of these set up for my actual working system with a lot more folders and nodes on it than this has. This is just an example I set up for the video, but it's super helpful. And I've been updating it for the last couple of years now whenever I find something that I like to tweak. If you're not really sure where to start, customizing someone else's system to work for you is probably going to be the easier of the two options. Just keep in mind that no single system is going to be right for everyone. So when you find those points of friction, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. And it also doesn't mean that the system doesn't work. If you see other people who swear by it, that's great. It works for them, and ultimately that's what matters. But that doesn't mean it's exactly what you need. If you're still searching for the best system, think about what you like and don't like about whatever it is that you're using now. Instead of reorganizing everything in your system based on yet another YouTube video or Substack article or whatever else you've seen, start chipping away at the stuff you don't like to make it more like the parts that you do. You'll get so much more done when you're actually working on the things that are in your system instead of trying to optimize the system itself. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, my name's John. I'm working on sanding down all the points of friction in my productivity setup and really in my entire tech stack. And I'm sharing what I learn along the way. Hopefully some of the things that I figure out will be helpful for you too. If you're interested in seeing more about what I'm working on, I've got links in the description down below to several of my current projects. And you might find this other recent video helpful too. I'll see you in the next video.